In light of the most recent Sam Harris Trigonometry podcast, there's been this new interest in the role of social media platforms because Sam Harris openly defended Twitter removing Donald Trump from their platform while he was still president, which is an unprecedented move. And this conversation's been going on for a while. It really started with, as far as I could tell, with the censorship of flat earth content, and nobody spoke up for the flat earthers, and soon the US president was getting removed from Twitter. Anyhow, it's a complex issue what the role of social media is. What is their telos? Is it to share news? Is it to share truth? Is it to punish bigotry? Is it to disincentivize hate? And what exactly is their purpose? And while it's true that this is a complicated topic, a lot of the arguments circling around this topic are not very well thought out. And I'd like to clear up one in particular, because that's probably all I can do in 10 to 20 minutes. A lot of people don't seem to understand the difference between a news company that is privately owned and a public utility. So a public utility is something like the phone company, whereas a news outlet is something like CNN or MSNBC or Fox. Now, just to make it concrete and less abstract, let's use AT&T for our example of a utility, and let's use CNN for an example of a news network. So AT&T, CNN. All right. So CNN has a very clear liberal bias. It's not as clear as some things, but they're pretty liberal. So if they don't want to publish something that makes, let's say, Joe Biden look bad, like the Hunter Biden laptop thing, and the fact that his son's a crackhead, let's say that they don't want to publish that. That's fine. I don't think they should be able to advertise themselves as a place where you get facts or truth or reason or anything like that, unless their reason is pushing up one side of the political aisle while holding down the other. But that doesn't seem very reasonable to me. But I suppose that depends on your motivations. I think if they were to advertise themselves as a place where they're giving facts, then that would be a lie, and they could be sued for false advertising. I think that's within the realm of possibility. So there's that. Now let's, on the other hand, say that CNN didn't post something or doesn't post things by conservatives that make conservatives look good. Let's just say that. Now let's say that AT&T stopped sending texts from anyone who was a registered liberal or registered Democrat. Let's say that they just didn't send text. They wouldn't send those people's texts. Like, they got their phone numbers and they realized that, because liberals are associated with communism, we're just not going to send your texts anymore. You can't communicate. Can you imagine the outrage? Now, let's say that, alternate example. Let's say that somebody on CNN organized a terrorist attack. They were a CNN employee. They put it on the show. They said, all right, everybody go to this person's house and throw Molotovs in their window. Well, would CNN be responsible for that as a corporation? Yeah, they should be, because they did it. Now let's say that somebody on using the AT&T mobile network sent a bunch of texts out saying, hey, go fuck with this person, and terrorize them and throw Molotovs in their window. Would AT&T be liable for that? No, because there's billions of texts flying around on their server all day, and they don't know who's saying what, and they're not responsible for somebody using a public utility for destructive purposes any more than if somebody uses the power grid to charge an electric rifle and then shoots up a school. The power grid is not responsible for that because they're a utility. The individual who committed the act is responsible for it, not the power company. So here we have the idea of liability, personal accountability, and the limits of free speech and the accountability for that free speech. If you're a utility, you are not responsible for the acts that people would do on your platform. You're not legally responsible for it. However, if you're a private publication who decides what they don't publish, if Twitter is a private publication that decides who can publish what and can't publish what, then that means that everybody on Twitter is actually a Twitter employee and is therefore liable. Therefore, Twitter is legally liable for anything that anybody says. So they have to make the decision. Are they a utility? Or are they a public news or a private news source? And it doesn't seem to me that people are really aware of that distinction, because I keep hearing people say, oh, Twitter doesn't have to publish anything that it doesn't want to. It's like, okay, then they're a private news source. They're editing information. Therefore, they're legally accountable in the same way that CNN would be if one of their news anchors called a terrorist attack or an airstrike in on somebody, or told somebody to go throw a Molotov in somebody's window. They're responsible for disseminating that information. So just keep that in mind so I don't have to deal with this stupid argument again. Thanks.